Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with Nassau Community College student Gina Halstead.
Mr. Bill, I believe the children are our future. Treat them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside.
Gina, I think you've been listening to too much Whitney Houston on the radio, but I agree with your sentiment.
I'm talking about education, Mr. Bill, and today's guests believe that education is one of the most important things in this world, too.
That's right, and today we're going to learn about the Baldwin Foundation for Education, an organization that benefits the students of Baldwin Public Schools and helps sustain Baldwin's tradition of excellence in education. Our guests are Robert B.A. Schoen, their president, and Stephen T. Carroll, a retired physical education teacher and football coach at Baldwin Schools. Robert and Stephen, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you for having us.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun today based on what we've been talking about before the show, but tell us a little bit about yourselves and your background.
Steve and I both grew up in Baldwin, the sons of fathers who graduated from Baldwin High School and had the wonderful advantage of being on the football team for the legendary coach, George Craig. And the stories that our dad would tell us about him and our continuing relationship with Coach Craig, even though he wasn't our coach, was an important part of our life and part of the reason that we love Baldwin and Baldwin Schools so much.
Yeah, everything that B.A. just said. I grew up in Baldwin, obviously, we just said that, and I went to Steele School, and Steele School was the furthest south school at the time, and that's where they had all their high school football games. And as B.A. was talking, my dad would sit after dinner, after we had our meal, and we would talk about the athletes in Baldwin and what an impact they had in our town. And then I got very interested. At that point, as probably a third or fourth grader, I knew I wanted to be a phys ed teacher. At that point, I also wanted to be a pro football player instead of the football coach.
And probably John Wayne you wanted to be, and a few other TV stars as time. But that's a great accolade, Gina, that these two gentlemen are in the town where they grew up, went to the high school, were part of the high school, and still there. That says a lot for the town of Baldwin. I mean, if that keeps people there that tightly, there's something going on there that we should all take a look at.
Absolutely. It speaks a level of community that I think many cities in Long Island should take note of. But I'm interested in knowing, when was the Baldwin Foundation for Education created, and how did it originally get its start?
Well, we were started in 1992. The superintendent of schools at that time, Gene Lanzaro, had the idea of having a foundation as a way to raise some money outside the tax and grants that were the usual form. And so he invited about 20 people that he called his likely suspects who might be interested in doing this, and incredibly got a loan to the foundation to get started so that we could incorporate and, do the things that we needed to get started. And since then, we've raised about $500,000 for scholarships and programs for the school.
500, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and we have a lot of generous alum and other people who understand our mission and support it.
Steve, how about yourself?
Well, my father was involved in the original group of founders, if you will, of the organization. And over the years, my mom became a part of it. She now, I believe, runs the scholarship program for the organization. And, of course, any way I could help out. Now, I will brag a little bit. I was also voted or picked the Man of the Year from that organization.
We should be very honored. We get his autograph.
It was a huge honor, though, because very few people get this honor, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that got it. And it's a real big honor because, again, not many people get it.
Now, I don't think people appreciate enough that, they see things happening in a town, but where does the money come from? Where does the people power come from? And you guys are part of the heart of it in your town in Baldwin. To take that $500,000, use it effectively, whether it's for a student or equipment, new learning materials, whatever. I mean, I think that's great, and really a big tribute to both of you for what you're doing. And the other members of the foundation, they're not here today, obviously there'd be too many, but for all the good that they're doing in helping people. How is the foundation itself organized? Is it like a business, a president, a vice president?
Well, yes, we have a board of directors. In fact, we met last night. Because of the pandemic, we have evolved into hybrid meetings. We meet at the Baldwin Public Library, and we have a Zoom meeting going on because we have a person in Georgia who runs our database, which is very important, and is our webmaster. We have a semi-annual newsletter, and the editor for that is in Florida. Now, they used to call in on a speakerphone before the pandemic, but as our skills improved, we've gone hybrid, and it's kind of fun because we have members that have moved away from the area but have been able to stay on the board because they can Zoom, and a lot of the work that can be done. And basically, we work in committees. I'm a delegator. We don't have to meet in person to do it.
I'm going to interrupt you and say, you know what that means, Gina? He's a delegator. He says, you do this, you do that, and that. He sits there, has a cup of coffee. He's got all these minions running around doing all the work for him, and he's getting the credit. Is that the deal, B.A.?
Can I just interject something?
I'm just having a little fun with him.
Mr. B.A. Schoen works extremely hard.
I'm sure he does.
No, I know, but I just want, because he will not say this. He says he kept the organization together for a long time, and his hard work has showed, and the amount of money that's in there is a great deal part of what BA has been doing over the years. So he's not going to say it, but he's a real strong backbone to that organization since 1992.
He's the glue.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, you were saying you're a delegator, though, but are there different departments in there? Like we usually think of a treasury, sales.
Like Steve mentioned, his mom, and it's not a gentleman's place to say how old a lady is, but she's Steve's mom.
Right.
And she runs the scholarships. She has a committee, and, they do their work. And last night when we had our meeting, she made a report. If I get kudos for that, I'll take them. But really, it is a matter of delegation.
I'm going to ask you just what's Steve's mom's name?
Kathy.
Kathy, we give a shout out to Kathy. If she's doing such a good job for scholarships, we all want to need that, and everybody needs money for college and other activities. So,
well, it's a delicate thing. She has a committee, and they get resumes of students who are applying, and we have about 10 that we give out, and there's some tough choices that they have to make, and frankly, I'm very glad that I don't have to make that decision. We have another alumni, a great Baldwinite, Bob Gorman, who has pledged $5,000 a year to a student athlete who was continuing their education. And Bob said, B.A., here's the money. Don't tell me anything about it except who won. And the young man who's getting this scholarship, this will pay for over 2 years of his fees to go to a very famous college.
That's really awesome. And I mean, I don't think we probably even fairly appreciate when an organization like yours donates money or helps a student, because sometimes I've seen people, and I've talked to friends of my daughters in town, why aren't you in college? Oh, we had kind of financial reversals. And sometimes we don't realize it doesn't have to be a whole lot that can put you over the edge one way or another. So you're doing great work. Gina?
I want to remind you that you are listening to My Hometown on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Gina Halstead, along with Bill Horan, and today we're learning about the Baldwin Foundation for Education, an organization that benefits the students of Baldwin Public Schools and helps sustain Baldwin's tradition of excellence and education. Our guests are B.A. Schoen, their president, and Stephen T. Carroll, a retired physical education teacher and football coach at Baldwin Schools. Now, you guys have been talking a lot about different committees that you have and the scholarships that you offer for students in Baldwin. But I'm curious into what kind of activities you throw, like as an organization. I'm pretty sure there are like fundraisers for people that are, that donate, as you do have some donors that you've recently talked about. So can you tell us a little bit about the activities that you guys have?
Well, every year we have an all-class beach party reunion, and that's about 30 years old. We started at Jones Beach, West End 2. That closed, and we moved to the Mushrooms down at Lido. And for the last couple of years, we've been at the fishing piers at Jones Beach, and it's just amazing. We get 300 people from the oldest 90-year-olds to grandchildren, and there's no agenda, no cost, and because of the location, we really can't raise money, but we do have a 50-50 every year. Almost every year we have an activity at the high school where we honor people like Steve and people who have made a contribution. We had one where we honored the first responders, and we had the fire department, the police, and those kinds of people. My dad was a veteran of the Second World War, and he said he never saw a general. He got 3 Bronze Stars. He was in campaigns from Australia up to Okinawa, and I thought, I know a general, and I can make it so that any vet that wants can not only meet a general, but have the general salute him and shake his hand. And so John Meinke, a classmate of mine at Baldwin High School, was an Air Force general. He came. We had an auditorium filled with veterans, and it was, it was a wonderful experience. It was something that I'm very proud of.
How many members are actually in the Baldwin Educational Foundation?
Well, that's hard to say. We have a mailing list. We mail out 9,000 copies of our newsletter every 6 months. We have a board of 16 members. Some people contribute more than others, but we feel that anybody that is an alum is a member of the foundation.
That's quite a big town, though, to have 9,000 members getting it, and that you put out a newsletter. I mean, this is like a small high school in and of itself, with the putting out a paper and reaching out to the people and running events. So you've got a lot going on.
Well, there's always the unintended consequences and benefits just by being a phone number, a place. People, we've made connections. We've helped people out that are not strictly part of our charter, but just making connections. And, that's kind of the small town thing to do. And Steve and I, always think of Baldwin as a small town.
Do you know the population of Baldwin, roughly?
Well, again, that's a real fuzzy number because the Baldwin Union Free School District includes parts of Freeport and Rockville Center.
Oh, okay.
The Baldwin Fire District has a different boundary than the Baldwin School District.
Why not? Sure.
And Baldwin is an unincorporated hamlet of the town of Hempstead. But in the area code of 11510, there are about 38,000 people.
So that's a pretty good size. So you have a good base to work from. Okay. Gina?
What is it about the Baldwin Foundation for Education that you are most proud of?
Well, I'm most proud of that we're unprofessional.
There's a unique answer. Go ahead.
We ought to be slicker, but we're not. And yet we're succeeding. We're not succeeding as much as we dream, but your reach should always exceed your grasp.
Steve, you are the former football coach and a physical education teacher there. You are also the author of a book called 100 Years of Baldwin Football.
Yes.
Now, most of our towns on Long Island, we don't even talk about 100 years because we haven't been there.
Right.
So 100 years is a long time. Tell us about that.
Well, as we were talking earlier about Coach Craig, when I first got the job as the head football coach, my first thing I did, which people ask me why, I got in touch with every former high school, Baldwin High School football coach, just sit and talk with them. Now, George Craig lived up in like the North Shore area, so he invited me up there, and he had a little golfing range in his backyard. He was walking me through it, and then we sat in his house. 8 hours later, I'm leaving. He gives me a box, and the box has hundreds of pictures. I get it home. First thing my wife says, "What are you going to do with that?" I said, "I don't know yet." Well, 25 years later, I put a book together. Unfortunately, he saved those pictures because they're pictures that would never be seen, never known about if he didn't have them, because I wouldn't have been able to find them. And then I started contacting a lot of the alumni, and the people. It's amazing how many people just jumped right in and sent me pictures and everything I needed. As I was talking about the game at Steele School, I have a picture that has 10,000 people in 1936 at a game in this tiny little schoolyard. And the people are right up against the sidelines, which they would never allow now. But my point, I mean, the pictures he gave me, and as we went along, so I'm sitting there going, I don't know if I could pull this off. And I was fortunate enough to have an editor by the name of Kathy Copy, who was like my backbone. Every time I slumped off a little bit, she goes, "You got to finish this." And then we had it, first print was finished in September. We sold about 150 books so far, and it's 244 pages. So it's, I will show it. I brought a brief, if you want to just look at what it looks like, because this was a...
We'll tell our radio listeners what it looks like a small phone book, actually.
Yeah, well, like I said, 244 pages. The gentleman who was the typesetter, I call it typesetter because I don't know what you really call him these days, just kept looking at him and goes, "Is this ever going to end?" I said, "When the pictures stop coming in, I will stop adding to it," because it was amazing. I would get done. All of a sudden, someone go, "I have pictures of my grandfather from 1937. I said, "Send it in." So
that really is a nice memorial for people who played. And when you talk about having 10,000 people at a game, I recall, a few years ago, Hofstra had football, and I think their turnout was maybe 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. That's
Right.
why they had to shut down. It just wasn't worth it.
Right.
And this was a high school football game that you had 10,000 people. So it must have been a lot of fun in Long Island those days and very competitive.
You know what? And it's frustrating to me in a couple of aspects. And what do I mean is people, and this is coming from a phys ed teacher, coach, don't acknowledge how much influence the athletics had in their community. I'm talking about all sports. Mm-hmm. The two biggest functions in a town, the 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even some of the 50s, was the fire department and the athletics. The athletics always had a packed house. I mean, like, BA was a wrestler, but back in the day on a Friday night when there was a wrestling match, you couldn't park within a mile of the high school because you couldn't get into the high school because of wrestling matches and basketball games. And so it was a huge part of the community, and that was part of what my purpose was in the book, is to say, look, this was big. This was a huge activity, and everyone was involved. The picture, and you look closer, people came to the football games dressed in their Sunday best. I'm talking everyone had top hats, everyone had overcoats, everyone had dresses on. So, it was the event.
I'm pointing to Gina and saying, but of course we see the old baseball movies and film strips, and you look there and it's mostly men in the crowd, but they're all very well dressed,
Yep.
and it's as if you were going to a Sunday meeting or church or something.
It was an event.
Yeah.
As I said, the Baldwin football games, any sport was an event. It wasn't just, all right, here's a game. Now you'll get 300 or 400 people at a game, which everyone thinks is a big deal. And I'm like, wow, you look at the old pictures. And when I even say that, I would say is probably about 1970, they were still getting huge crowds. And then it started to taper off.
Well, the TV and other distractions.
Well, that's what it was.
So many other options.
But I'll
Right,
tell you,
exactly.
if I was a player, even part of Baldwin, I would want this book, and I'm not a salesman for you, but trying to get this on the coffee table, because if you had a relative, your father, your uncle, your brother, your grandfather, great-grandfather, this goes back to 100 years. It shows pictures of Long Island way back when. Yeah. And I think this is one of those family treasures people should get in touch with you and have if they have someone who's been connected with sports.
I have an uncle that played in 36, an uncle that played in 38, my father in 48, and my two brothers and myself were all captains in the 70s. So our family lineage is big in Baldwin football.
Then you better buy about 5 or 6 of these books from yourself, and you better pay the foundation for that. Gina?
I want to remind listeners that you are listening to My Hometown on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Gina Halstead along with Bill Horan, and today we're learning about the Baldwin Foundation for Education, an organization that benefits the students of Baldwin Public Schools and helps sustain Baldwin's traditions of excellence in education. Our guests are B.A. Schoen, their president, and Stephen T. Carroll, a retired physical education teacher and football coach at Baldwin Schools. Now, you guys talked earlier about the fact that you give away a pretty significant amount of scholarship to Baldwin students, and some ranging between $1,000 to $2,500, and the largest I've heard so far is $5,000 for an athletic scholarship. What do students need to do in order to apply to these scholarships?
Well, it's not necessarily an application process in all cases, but obviously they have to be of good character. That's the one thing that people don't understand, how much is taught in all public schools. You know, we're the ones that have the flag in every classroom and start the day with the Pledge of Allegiance and have codes of conduct. So we couldn't recognize somebody that didn't conform to a proper code of conduct. Some of the scholarships are for need. Some of the scholarships are for specific courses of study, etc. And some of them are independently funded, so their revenue stream is outside our fundraising. Families remembering a loved one, for example. But one of the things that I should have mentioned about what we do, and this was part of Gene Lanzaro's vision, is we provide innovative grants to teachers, so that if they have an idea they want to try, they don't have to go through all the funding that the bureaucracy that public education entails. Steve has gotten a grant or two in the past, something outside the normal funding stream, and some of these things have been art installations. Some of them have been technology or programs that the district was so impressed by that they made it part of the regular curriculum and funding.
You know, that's great. And Gina, you're a student, but I come from a family of teachers, and how many times teachers put money out of their own pockets for these things, if they can. I mean, you're usually talking about a reasonable expense if you're getting something that has to be used in a classroom, has to be, take the bric-a-brac that goes through all day, someone drops it, it's got to be break-proof or at least resistant. And to do that for the teachers and to help the education, and obviously a good educational tool, even if it's something as simple as chalk, can go on and on. You're helping many generations and people who just may need that extra little push to understand something or to be introduced to a subject and make it fun. I read there's something called Nexus. Is that a publication you put out?
Yes, that's our newsletter. When I was in school, and for a long time, the yearbook of Baldwin Senior High School was called the Nexus. So playing on that nostalgia, that's what we call our newsletter.
Who is really, because that must be a lot of work to put that together and get it out to the people in town.
Again, I'm a delegate.
Okay. And who did you delegate that to? Let's get somebody credit.
Well, Mary Lou Hillsgrove Taylor is our current editor. Her older sister, Peggy Hillsgrove Sparakis, was chairman of the English department. Now, when I was in junior high, the guys used to wait on the corner to see her pull up in her MGA sports car. She was Baldwin's Grace Kelly.
All right.
And she was a Baldwin grad. She was our first president and, an English teacher, and just the perfect person to set the mark about what the Nexus was going to be. And then her baby sister, Mary Lou, helped her as Peggy declined and picked up the reins and has been doing it for about 6 years.
Sounds like a lot of good people in Baldwin who are doing a lot of good things for your foundation.
If that was part of the genius of Gene Lanzaro. He tapped the right people. I'm fortunate enough that I have people to delegate to.
Gina?
Do you know if other school districts have similar organizations like the Baldwin Education organization, and do you work with any of them? Do you guys do any collaborations?
There are foundations in other schools. Some of them have, let's say, tentpole sponsors that give them an ability to have banquets, etc., where they can raise significantly more money than we do. Some of them have gatherings like we do, and there isn't yet an organization, and I hate to say this out loud because I don't need another organization to be part of, but there ought to be an organization of these organizations so that we could trade techniques and best practices.
Gentlemen, if there's someone hearing this show and obviously from Baldwin, or maybe they're in another location, and as you said, some people are now living out of state, a long time ago graduate, they may have pictures, stories about Baldwin, etc. Is there a website or some way they could get in touch with you folks and tell the foundation about it, or maybe pass on the pictures to you or copies of them?
Well, by mail, it's Post Office Box 350, Baldwin, 11510. Rather than give you the website, that we have a Facebook page, Baldwin Foundation for Education.
Okay.
Very easy to find, and we have all our contact information on that.
And I'm sure if they just call the school district, they'll put them in touch with you or get you guys together.
Sure.
And so if you have any Baldwin memorabilia, and it sounds like it's been a great experience for 100 years now, that in fact, I think you told me that one of the first graduating classes 100 years ago was 2 people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
See, I listen and I pay attention. I'm a good student. We want to thank our guests today for being here. Robert B.A. Schoen, he's the president of the Baldwin Foundation for Education, and Stephen T. Carroll, a retired physical education teacher and football coach at the Baldwin Schools. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Nassau Community College student Gina Halstead. We thank you for listening to this week's episode of My Hometown.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.